Welcome back to the official Atari Games podcast. This is Jason here, joined by Ethan Stearns,
Whoop,
VP of
whoop.
Games. Welcome back to the podcast, Ethan.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. First time on the podcast, David Lowey, Senior Director of Communications. David, welcome to the pod.
Dream.
Yeah, I like how. Look, here's the thing. I usually tell people, and I didn't tell you guys before, but typically with the new production that we have here, it's supposed to start with I introduce you, then you respond for a few seconds, so that John can, when he's doing the production, can highlight your face with your title. Yeah. But every time I introduce someone, even after I tell them that, there tends to be an overlap of me talking and them jumping in saying, "Oh yeah, good to be here." Before,
all right, let's start over. Let's start over then.
No, we're not starting over. This is all staying in there. It doesn't matter. We had enough.
Jeez.
Well,
I will say though, this is awesome for David and I to be on this together, because in a lot of ways, David and I have been kind of the yin yang of like the games group for the last 2 years, and so we can talk about anything here. The two of us together, we can make anything happen. We can greenlight a game right now. We can announce a new game. We can do whatever we want on this podcast.
Sweet.
Just don't tell Wade.
Right. He'll never know. That's okay. This is just between the three of us. No one will ever know.
Perfect.
And look, this episode is a mailbag. We're going to be answering a bunch of your questions. The audience has sent us a bunch of questions on Discord, so we'll be going through all those. And I thought, hey, let's get a smattering of us who can actually answer pretty much any question that comes our way. So that's what I've done. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining. Before we get into all that, I got some housekeeping and stuff to take care of here. First of all, NeoSprint, it's out. Get it. It's on everything. All those links will be in the description below.
Yay.
Next up, Yars Rising. It's coming soon. Wishlist it. There's a question about it later on, so we'll talk a little bit about it.
It's gone gold even. It's
gone gold.
It's through certification. It's done.
Much hype.
Yeah.
We can get into that later. But yeah, those links as well in the description. Steam Summer Sale. Hey, have you held off on taking my advice here and buying the things I told you to buy? Well, guess what? Everything is on sale from now through July 11th on Steam, thanks to the Steam Summer Sales. Also on sale through other stores, I think. But, everybody's going crazy over Steam with the decks and
the Xbox
PCs.
Sale just started.
Yeah, it started this morning. Xbox Publisher Sale across Atari, Digital Eclipse, and Night Dive Studios.
How about that? So check all that out. I'm not going to link to that. Just go to Steam, look for the game you're looking to, and you will find it. Actually, you know what? I lied. I will link to our Steam page, which will have all of the games listed there. How about that? Finally, Discord. Join the Atari Games Discord. If you were on the Atari Games Discord, you would have seen the post that had a call for questions for this very podcast. You could have asked questions that I'm going to be reading on this very podcast.
Gosh.
So if you're like, man, I missed out, what a bummer. Well,
I could have put words into Jason Polanski's mouth. You could have just put them into his mouth. An amazing opportunity.
What an opportunity. Exactly. And you missed it. So, hey, don't miss the next time it happens. Join the Discord. Hey, wouldn't you know? The link is in the description below as well. Enough of all that. Let's move to promises made, promises kept. What did I say last episode? David definitely listened. David, what did I say?
You said you were going to be taking mailbag questions.
No, I didn't. That was a big surprise that I decided on last week, but it was a good guess. What I did say was, if you review us, I always make a call for reviews because we need more reviews on podcast services, Spotify and iTunes specifically. On iTunes, you can actually write a review. On Spotify, you cannot. But I said, if you write a review on iTunes, I would read the review as long as it's not inflammatory or disrespectful or has any ists at the end, no like racism, etc. So we got one. Hooray. So here we are. 5 stars. Atari is back by Greek Geek. He says, quote, as a Gen Xer who spent many hours with my Atari 2600 and 1200 XL, it is fantastic to see this company surging ahead again. I use my Atari VCS nearly every day and love most of the new games they are releasing. This podcast is so great for us true fans. They are always interesting and go very deep with the topics and guests. So thank you, Greek Geek. Thank you for listening.
Nice. Nice and nice.
Now,
Greek.
Now that offer still goes out. Now, will I be able to do that for the next podcast? No, because I'm actually recording that tomorrow, which is July 3rd, and it actually won't go live until July 19th. I think that's the Friday. So sorry about that. But if you have more reviews, I will read them for the following one. So keep them coming, and I will keep reading them. And we appreciate it. Mailbag time. No, I'm just kidding. I'm teasing again because I got it's like a comment 0 because am I better than self-flattery? No. I say I read all the comments that go on the YouTube videos, and it's true. So I'm going to read one from Ryan Brennan 3228. He says, Jason, I love your humor. Very funny. I think every episode you make me laugh at least once. Keep it coming. Ryan, you got it.
I feel like you just picked a nice one.
Sure did.
I feel like that may have been your alter ego.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I want to read one here. I'm gonna read one from the Wizardry one. This is from 2 weeks ago.
Pick a better name than that if I wanted an alter ego.
What was the last one we did?
Yars. Big fan over here.
Oh, that's right. I watched that one.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of views. Let's see what we got here for comments.
Yeah, this is good. People like you looking for comments.
I got one. Here's one from the Jaeger992. He says, "Bring back Awesome Knots servers!" ! So that's a good one. Right on subject,
Yeah, you want to talk to that?
About what?
What he's saying.
Well, I mean, we haven't announced it anywhere else, but we are bringing back the Awesome Knots servers. It's gonna be a little complicated because the Awesome Knots servers were, when we took control of that game, we're in a state of going offline, out of our control. So we have a plan in place. We'll announce more on it soon. That's all I'll say.
Stay tuned. All right. Now for real.
I was trying to find a mean comment. I thought it'd be funny because you read such a nice comment.
Yeah.
I was curious if there was one that was like, Jason, your voice annoys me. Stop doing podcasts or something mean.
That's a good point.
Just to balance it out.
I'd like to see those. I haven't seen them.
No, they're not.
Maybe that's honestly how they feel. If that's how people feel.
I don't think it is. I think they all like you. I mean, when we were at PAX West, people came up to me and they were like, "Hey, is that Jason from the podcast?" I was like, "Yeah, man, go talk to him."
Yeah, one guy.
Hey, that's all it takes, man.
That's all it takes. You're right. Look, man, that's all it takes. Slow but steady. It's good stuff. All right, let's get to the questions. Let's get serious here. Let's get to the topic at hand. I've pulled 17 questions. If your question was not chosen, I apologize. Maybe we could get to some at the end, depending on time. But let's just go in the order that I have here, which you yourself cannot see if you're listening to this, but I can, and that's what matters. So, first, kind of a bit of a warm-up question here. We're going to start not games related. I like to have a warm-up question. Now, first, a comment. 7 of 7. This is one of your questions. You sent a whole lot of questions. I got 2 of them here. This is one of them. And I like the amount of questions you sent that I can use as warm-up questions in future podcasts. So if you have more of these weird questions, keep them coming. That goes to anybody. I like the off-topic stuff. I like a good warm-up question. So here we go. Fellas, you've recently joined the Spice Girls. What spice name have you created for yourself? David, go.
For me personally?
Yeah. Well, who else would you choose?
I have no idea.
So for yourself,
I've always told her for years that she would be Sleepy Spice. I've never met anybody like sleeping as much as she does. But
okay, but your wife's not on the podcast.
No, she's not.
Though. She's welcome anytime.
She would be much better at it than I am.
You're killing it so far.
Oh, yeah, killing it. Spice Girl's name. I don't know. I kind of think, you go for alliteration and go with Spicy Spice.
Wow. I figured you would go with I actually took this from a literal spice perspective. Like, what kind of spice tarragon? Do I like?
Parsley?
Parsley's a spice? I guess it can be. Yeah, you could try parsley.
Sure, if you chop it up.
It's a good point.
It's a good question. What spice? Like cardamom spice would probably be the one I would go with.
I don't know. I don't know if that came through, but Ethan just subtly said, "It's an herb."
It is an herb. You're right.
It is. But I mean, are herbs subclass of spice? Maybe.
Sure. I mean, they're usually lumped together. Typically, I mean, look, let's go to the true keeper of this, which is KFC. What do they say? Herbs and spices,
right?
They say both. Yeah, they separate.
But I mean, you have a spice cabinet and you keep herbs in it. You don't call it your herbs and spice cabinet, you know?
No, because that would be ridiculous. All right, well, Ethan, what about you? What spice would you be?
Well, this is funny. I can't remember if it's because we saw the questions and we were just talking about spice. We were talking about Spice Girls the other day, and I mentioned that Angry Spice because I thought that was a Spice Girl, and everyone laughed at me. So I think I'll have to go with Angry Spice as and then. But we're talking about Spice Girls. But if we're talking about like Spice, I have like a bunch of spice.
It says, "quote What spice name have you created for yourself?"
That's the only bit of. That's the only.
Yes,
it has nothing to do with Spice
so meaning
Girls?
you are. How many people are in the Spice Girls? 5. All of a sudden, they've added a 6.
Right.
And you would have to go by blank spice.
Angry Spice. That'd be Angry Spice.
Right. There was Scary Spice, but not Angry Spice.
Oh,
Angry Spice is good.
Scary
Spice.
I
was remembering
Mel B was considered the angry Spice Girl. Right. So that's why you were thinking of it.
All right.
I'm a big Eddie Murphy fan.
So David, have you made a decision, or should I just give mine and then we move on?
Oh, I think Spicy Spice is perfect.
Yeah, I like that one.
Fair enough. And you know what? Because I take it literally, I'm going with cinnamon spice because I love cinnamon. I use a lot of it.
I think that works as a Spice Girl name and as a spice name.
Right.
Well done.
Yeah. There you go. 7-7. Great question. Next up, Raging. He writes, how many games will be on the DLC for Atari 50? So, let me give you a little insight.
We're a good group to answer that because you're the producer on the game. Exactly. I'm overseeing the games group, and David's in charge of telling people how many games are on this.
That's right.
Collection.
I've already had to correct it once.
Yeah. So here's a little bit of background into some game development. Things change all the time, and stuff could go wrong. So the actual number is 38. No, wait, sorry, 36. It's 36.
38, I thought.
Sorry, you're right.
It's 36.
38. We just had to chop one, and that's why.
Yeah, it used to be 39.
Right. It used to be 39. Now it's 38. Now, unfortunately, we figured out we had to chop one the day we made the announcement that there was going to be 39 games.
And that game was going to be the one you wanted.
Of course,
the one you wanted. That's the one we chopped.
Sorry, Frisky Tom, you are not going to be in this collection.
But we do now have 19 on each of the 2 DLCs for a total of 38. So now they're even.
Correct. Yeah. So that's the number.
And we'll get an avalanche of people complaining or telling us that we should change the price of one versus the other because they had one more game.
Yeah. And in the event that this is a sneaky way to ask what the games are, when will we be saying, in the most vague of terms that David is comfortable saying, there you go, soon.
When? So, I'm thinking the first set of games will probably come out sometime in August, don't you think? About a month or so, Ethan?
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Also, you're going to have whoever's tapping that table is going to have to stop tapping that table. Because we can hear that. It's coming through the mic. I apologize if you had to hear that. But yeah, sounds good. Thanks for that. Next question. Ethan, you could take this one. When will, I just got to read it as is. Fyra, this is what you wrote, so this is what I'm going to read. When will be able to pre-order in stores Yars Rising?
In stores. I believe PlayStation... Wait, hold on a second. Let me look at what Sam had wrote on this.
In the meantime, while he's looking for that, I will say you can pre-order the physical versions right now.
That's a great point.
So if you want a physical version of the game, do it. You can pre-order it for Switch and PS5, I believe.
Switch and PS5, yes.
Yep. And you could do that through any the major retailers. Through Amazon, Best Buy,
have a list online that has, if you go to the game page on our website, you can link through. We have a list of global retailers who are stocking the game, who you can pre-order from.
So PlayStation should go up, if it's not up already, it should go up really soon. So by the time the podcast comes out, PlayStation should be up for pre-order, and Switch and Xbox will be up on 7/10. I'm sorry. PlayStation will be 7/31, so it's closer. But also there'll be a discount on PlayStation for PS Plus subscribers. So there's some incentive there.
It's good stuff. So be on the lookout. All right. Next question. Speaking of games in the future, allegedly. McDonald's. I guess that's how you'd say it, right? Sure. Let's go with that. Will there ever be a new flagship RollerCoaster Tycoon game?
Definitely at some point. Yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah. We have nothing to announce at this point.
What would be a flat? What it means? What do you think flagship means in this situation, Jason?
If I was to describe a flagship RCT game, I would say like a true successor to that like hardcore simulation. That to me is like probably a flagship, or maybe yeah, exactly. I think that to me would describe flagship. You know.
Well, we renewed our deal with Chris Sawyer and that renewing that relationship with our partnership with Chris Sawyer, of course, comes with plans. So, we're going to try to do everything we can to make great RollerCoaster Tycoon experiences, like in many different places. And yeah, I mean, it would be really smart to make a flagship title. We should have a meeting about that, talk about it, maybe.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Hey, weren't these the people that you said we should get on a call to talk about that? We should do that later, though.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. I'll also say when I was sitting next to a certain executive from Sony randomly on the first ever first class flight I took from Tokyo to LA.
Humble brag.
I was asking him, I'm like, oh, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? And every response to something I asked was just, that would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
So my real answer to your question, McDonald's, is that would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
David, anything to add?
Pardon?
Anything to add?
Anything to add to that? That was so. I mean, there was so much detail in that answer. How could you add to that? I would agree. I think it would be amazing. We certainly didn't re-up the agreement with Sawyer not to have some serious fun. And I can tell you the organization is very committed to, as Ethan said, create some very cool RollerCoaster Tycoon experiences. So
that's right.
I don't know. I'm optimistic.
Including some RollerCoaster Tycoon cold brew coffee from Wishlist, and some fun. I think it's funnel cake,
cotton candy, right?
Cotton candy.
And then a cotton candy, but the cotton candy is not coffee, right? It's something else. Cotton candy. I don't know. But Drainus, they know their gamer fuel in their gamer coffee, so you guys should go check that out.
That's wild. I can't comment on any of that stuff. I don't like coffee, so bad person to really.
The matcha man.
That's right. When are we going to get? Here's a better question. When are we going to get RollerCoaster Tycoon themed matcha? Cassandra. See, Cassandra, I got beef with her because she keeps evading my calls to come on this podcast and have a QVC style podcast to talk about all of the cool licensing stuff we're doing. I would love to talk about that little handheld that was announced today that you could pre-order. Do you see the wood grain finish on those things? It's awesome.
Yeah. You should get her on here and just grill her about all the ideas for things. Not prepare her at all and just bring her on and on live camera, just ask her all the questions.
What is it, July?
During the week. At a company meeting.
It's July right now. I've been trying to get her on since
she's busy.
January.
She's got lots of deals.
She's busy. Look, I get it, man. Look at the handheld. It's cool. I know what stuff she's cooking up there. It's some cool stuff. I'm also jealous that she lives in the town that has my favorite burger place in the world.
White
Mana, the original. Not the bootleg one in Jersey City. Okay, moving on. How would you pronounce this name?
I can't see what you're looking at.
Knuckle Allent. Let's go with that.
Nuclean?
Nuclean. That might work. Nucleallen. Knuckle Allen. I don't know. Whatever. And the funny thing is, you got a couple more questions later on because I liked them. Good questions. Which Atari console / handheld is your favorite? David, let's start with you.
Oh, it's a multi-layered question. I think there's no doubt that my favorite to play, because it's the one I had the most experience with, was the 2600. But I'm kind of fascinated by the Jaguar and the Lynx. I think the packaging, the branding, the fact that they were so sort of regionalized and shall I say, had brief existences. I just think they're really interesting. But yeah, the 2600 is the one that I have the most warm memories of.
Very cool. Ethan, what about you?
I like the Jaguar. I mean, for similar reasons. I just think it was more of my era of like really going deep into video games and just staying up until 3 in the morning every night and playing video games was during that Jaguar era. And I had like a friend at school who had one amongst like all the other consoles, the Neo Geo and of course all the Nintendo and PlayStation and PC and stuff like that. So I used to go over there to play the Jaguar, and it was I don't know. I love the branding on all the Jaguar stuff.
Yeah, the branding's amazing. There's no doubt about it. I've always been fascinated by the games on the 7800, though. Like, they're just crazy. I don't know what was going on with developers or with the Atari games team that was approving these titles at the time, but things like, Ninja Golf and what's the alien one where you surf, where they're surfing and shooting at or motor. They're wild. Just some
Desert
wild,
Falcon.
crazy games came out of them.
Was Desert Falcon 7800, or was there a 2600 as well?
There was a 2600 as well.
I always think of the 7800 version.
Alien Brigade? Is that the one?
Alien Brigade.
Yeah,
you're literally water skiing and shooting at people on the shores, but some of them are aliens and some of them aren't. You have to be very careful. It's just wild. Like, just something was in the water at that time where just crazy games were coming out.
Yeah, I do respect the Jaguar branding because it's so 90s.
Yes,
it like I miss that, man. I miss all the textured stuff that came with logos in the 90s and 80s, and seeing how everything has become more flat, like that whole modern design. I get it. It's clean. It's readable. You know what else it is? Kind of boring. Like, I like how aggressive the Jaguar branding is, and it just doesn't care. Like, it's great. It's perfect. So I like that. For me, my favorite Atari console, I bet you guys would never guess this, but it's actually the Atari 400, because that was the one I had. I was born in the late 80s. I grew up on Nintendo consoles. So the NES, SNES, those were my consoles growing up. But there was also an Atari 400 in the house because it was my stepdad's. So that was my exposure to Atari and firsthand. So I was able to play those games. Like, he had Frogger, he had Centipede, and Centipede was the game that I would play the most. So yeah, the Atari 400, it's like kind of by a mile. That's far and away my favorite Atari console.
All right.
Yeah. Moving on. Bevork? He asks, they ask, I don't know, I shouldn't assume any genders here. How much original material from Atari is still present, and how do you handle archiving and cataloging physical and digital assets? This is a cool question because it kind of gets into the kind of the history and the modern processes that we have here. And let's start with the classic stuff. And I think David or Ethan, you guys would probably be the best ones to answer this question. Maybe David.
I actually have a timely answer to this question.
Perfect.
So there was a coin-op era that Atari had, where we mostly made arcade machines, and there was a collector who had a massive store of cabinets and information related to that era, and he donated the entire collection to the Strong Museum of Play up in Rochester, and the equivalent collection of Atari post coin-op, so the console era and the game publishing era, the largest collection in the U.S. was in the hands of a gentleman by the name of Kurt Bendel, who sadly passed away a few years. Was well known to Atari. Had worked, did some engineering work on the Atari Flashback console. Was involved in homebrew gaming. Actually created the game Yars Return. He had a massive collection of Atari things, including the servers from Atari's offices with all the magnetic tapes and everything. And all of that information 2 weeks ago, the Strong Museum sent a big box truck down to his house, which is about a half hour away from mine. I went and met the team there while they loaded up his pretty much his entire collection and took it back up to Rochester, where they have a team of curators who will both catalog and preserve a lot of that content. So that's my initial answer: is that a lot of Atari's history isn't in our hands. It's actually went out into the ether, was pulled together in collections of fans, and a lot of it has ended up in Rochester. There is another collector in France, and a group of collectors in France who run a site called Atari Mania, and I know that one of those individuals has a massive collection of Atari content as well, stuff that was mostly published in Europe. But in all honesty, a lot of the stuff from the 70s, 80s, and 90s is really in private hands or at museums right now.
It's almost like finding stuff. It's almost like archaeological exercises, finding all this old stuff from back in the day.
Oh, entirely. I mean, if you go back, I mean, the company, it was sold a few times, and in each one of those transitions, a lot of content was lost. So people have made careers and hobbies out of rebuilding it. Look at Tim Lapatino in the book The Art of Atari. A lot of the chronicles key art, which Atari invented, that's used in stores and on boxes and stuff, catalogs that whole. Tells the story of all those illustrators and their work. He had to actually, to get the high resolution images, he actually had to work with a lot of private collectors to pull that in. It's not like Atari had a vault that had all this content in it. So yeah, we really do work very closely with collectors when we want to go find something from 1988.
Yeah, I mean that's also part of the process with the guys at Digital Eclipse when they do the Gold Master stuff or when they do the Atari 50. How they find all that stuff. They don't just have it on hand. They gotta find it. They gotta source it out. They're creating these like really high quality scans of them to get them into the game. I mean, that in turn is a means of preservation to have those in that game itself.
100%. And they, from an engineering standpoint with what they do with the code, but also, they worked very closely with the Strong Museum to get access to those things. Or if you look at the book that Tony Temple wrote about the development of the game Missile Command, he flew to the U.S. from the U.K. and spent some time at the Strong Museum just going through all their original papers, because they've got the handwritten notes that go back to that the engineers and programmers were using when they created that arcade game, and then when they created the 2600 version. So, yeah,
cool. That's the Strong National Museum of Play, right? That's the one in Rochester. Cool. Just want to give them a shout out. So it's good stuff. Ethan, anything to add on that one?
No, I mean, I think you touched on the Digital Eclipse stuff. I think, right now in our current version of Atari, like that game and it's all the art material and video material that was produced for that in so many ways is our current archive. And we, of course, are adding things to it all the time. Like recently in the acquisition of Intellivision, there's a process in which we're trying to bring in any existing assets and materials that company held, as we hopefully do future stuff with Intellivision IPs or the Intellivision IP itself. Like there will be more collection of materials that we do through that process. And we kind of have a bit of a boring solution for things internally where we have working files and things that we need to access for our like graphic designers and people to be able to access and produce projects with, or if it's like our licensing program where we need to provide art out to licensing partners, we want to have those files as sort of live access, but we're also working on having more long-term geographically separated digital storage of lots of stuff as well. It's unfortunate that we don't have a lot of physical stuff. There have been pods of things that have been uncovered as this era of Atari and Wade's era of Atari has existed, that has also been is also going through a process of consolidation. But there's also not a lot of that stuff, to David's point. And in so many ways, I think it's kind of good that the museum is managing that stuff. They will do the right amount of archival process to make sure that stuff is saved. And the relationships that groups like Digital Eclipse and Tim and other people have done to build those relationships with the museum to access those materials to make those, make things like the book or Atari 50, allows us to interact with it in cool ways. So, um, we're doing our part, but it's a pretty massive project.
Yeah, totally. One other interesting point here, because you mentioned physical assets as well. It's not really known, but the fact is that ESRB is actually a keeper of every physical game that has an ESRB rating. Just kind of an interesting, fun fact if you're not familiar. So whenever we get an ESRB rating on a thing, we're actually supposed to send them a copy.
Yep.
And as a result, they have, and that's every other partner as well. So if there's ever been a physical copy of a game, they have it. It's kind of an interesting thing to think about. So,
I mean, I would imagine it doesn't need to be said, but we care very much about game preservation, and the company, as we've been growing in recent years, have had many people from Mike and the team at Digital Eclipse to the group at Atari Age to even the work that the Moby team does for Moby games, which people don't maybe not even know that is associated with Atari, but that was something that was a group that joined Atari, and like the work that um, gets done on Moby Games to database and keep all that stuff. There's a lot of passion for preservation here. It's not all about like file cabinets full of all of the game art. Some of it is less sexy than that, but it definitely is a big part of what the company's you know um, I don't know if it's a mission statement, but like what pumps through our veins, I guess, is that
yeah,
Oh,
the
yeah.
goal of keeping
And
things preserved.
100%, one of the things you're alluding to is this idea that preservation really matters when it's accessible, right? So having stuff out in the ether, whether it's at Strong or in Moby Games or the community at Atari Age, that's what makes preservation tangible and useful to people. It's not just that there's like one sealed copy locked away in a vault somewhere, but it's that people can access and add to and discuss, this information and share it. And that's part of the way that Atari defines preservation, right?
yeah.
Preservation for us means you can play the game, you can learn about it.
And I think this kind of segues into the next question from Zbor, who says, "Who's your distribution partner now that you're publishing games to retail on your own again?" And I like this question because it gives an opportunity to shine some of our partners that don't necessarily have much the spotlight. Like I think when you think about third party physical publishing, uh, limited run, they get a lot of recognition, and they're out there, they're doing their thing, and it's cool. It's a cool business model. And we work with them, but a lot of our physical releases are actually done by a company called UNI, and UNI is a company that if you looked at an article on IGN or others, like probably most people in the industry wouldn't know they exist. And there's a lot of those kind of unsung heroes throughout the industry that are doing a lot of cool stuff. And UNI has been a pretty great partner to do physical runs for a lot of our games in the mass market. So Yars, for example, the recently announced, Atari 50 and the recently announced expanded edition, those are done through UNI. So shout out to those guys. Are there any others that you wanted to speak to on that?
We do have a pretty big roster of partners that we use in different situations. For example, Wizardry physical was just released, or the pre-orders are live with a company called Super Deluxe in Japan. I think they're potentially adding South Korea. Don't hold me to that. We have a number of different partners, but yeah, I think Limited Run and you and I have had most of the games that we've published in the last 3 years physically across the 3 different studio brands. Yes, those are the 2 main ones, but you will see other ones crop up from time to time. We worked with Numbskull Games out of the UK. They do a really, really nice job. They worked on a couple of games of ours, including a double pack with Mr. Run and Jumping Combinera, both
Oh yeah,
with
that's
cool
cool. I
games.
love that art for Aka. Ethan,
And
for the audio listeners, Ethan is holding up a copy of Aka
a
art.
signed Jeff Minter signed
Jeff
copy of
Minter
Aka art.
and what's his name? My brain broke.
Ivan?
Jeff and Ivan.
Ivan, yeah.
Yeah.
Giles, as he likes to go by. All right, moving on. Let's take a little break from the Atari questions. 7 of 7, you got another one here. Which superpower would you not want? So, you're spinning the superpower wheel and you're like, please don't land on blank.
Well, particularly if you only get one superpower, the last superpower I would want would be, I think, seeing into the future, which I know is a frequent superpower, because you wouldn't be able to do anything with it. It'd make you neurotic. And if you didn't have any other superpowers like time travel or anything else to sort of mitigate what you see, you'd just be miserable. It just sounds like hell.
I'm going to go next before I ask Ethan. And I'm going to say mind reading is probably the last one I'd want. Because ignorance is bliss. I don't really want to know what people are thinking. Can I turn it off? Is it like a what women want situation and you just hear everybody talking shit about you? I don't know. I don't need that on my mind. So yeah, mind reading, don't want it. Keep it away from me. And I'll just assume everybody thinks I'm awesome.
Yeah, I mean, for somebody who obsessively reads his podcast comments, I think just having that as a permanent flow into your brain would be too much.
Dude, could you imagine having the ability to read people's minds, and you couldn't turn that off, and you were on a subway?
Yeah, that'd be bad.
That'd be awful. In New York, that's got to be the worst superpower. If you were like in the woods, cool, that's fine. Every 3 people that walk by you on a monthly basis, you're like, all right, great. Are they going to murder me? No, cool, carry on. But in a city, hell no. Ethan, what about you?
I mean, I feel like I just strive to be all powerful, so I can't think of a superpower I wouldn't want to have, because I would my whole life is about becoming the most powerful person I can imagine. So,
okay.
Yeah, I would just take all. I would take them all.
You want them all? Okay, fair enough. Wow.
No, that was pretty weirdly egotistical. I think I wouldn't want super strength. I feel like if you had super strength, I would like break like stuff all the time by accident, like trying to be,
True.
knock over walls and trying to open doors, or just like break off the doorknob and stuff. Like I don't think I don't want the responsibility of super strength.
Sounds like the other problem have experience with already. You must be halfway there.
Yeah,
right. That's the other thing. I'm already pretty strong. So
that's true. I've seen Ethan lift like crazy heavy things like with zero effort at conferences. It's nuts. It's dad strength.
It's just
right?
dad strength, exactly.
Dad strength. Yeah, that's why I'm weak. No kids. Also, when you're super strong, people are just gonna be like, "Well, can you lift that up?
Right?
Can you lift this up?"
And all they're like, "Can you come help me move?" Or like,
yeah, that's true. Oh, but in that case, you know what you do? You lift the whole house and you move.
Right.
There you go. Moved. All right. Let's get back to the questions. All right. A lot of these are going to be in David's camp to answer. So here we go. David volunteered to answer these questions. First off, Mr. Entropy says, is the great Atari Celebrity Showdown still moving forward? And I want to start by saying, I don't know what this is.
Mr. Entropy must live in LA.
Okay.
So we have announced the great Atari Celebrity Showdown a couple of months ago, and another documentary project. They were both announced in LA. More of an industry announcement, which is why not everybody
Someone stands out in the corner of Hollywood and Vine and just says, "This is announced." That's what announcing in LA means.
Exactly. And it's hard to hear him because
I'm working on a script.
That's kind of what it is.
Oh, yeah, that guy's working on a script.
So these games are announced, meaning the project. It's almost like saying, "This is a project we want to do. Who's in?" Right? It's the beginning of the project, right, where you're trying to get distribution and production and talent attached to a project. So any media project like this that's announced is usually means we intend to try to make is the way I would read it. So yeah, I think the Great Celebrity Showdown, I think interest in that was pretty strong after the initial announcement. I haven't heard anything about it since because I haven't asked. But there's a good chance it's going to go forward. But there's a lot of gates it needs to pass between concept and actually having one of the media players sign on and say yes, we're going to air that. Fair answer.
Right. Yeah, we had to get it in the trades. First we got to get in the trades. And
exactly. It's a trade announcement.
This conversation's so over my head, I have nothing to add, so I'm going to go to the next question. Dr. Surge the Tenrec says, I always wanted to know why they thought of reviving the iconic 2600 as the Atari 2600 Plus and make it play both 2600 and he wrote 7900. I'm pretty sure he meant 7800 here. 7800.
Entirely. So I can give you the answer to that. Not why it was named the 2600 Plus, but I can explain what the plus means. So anything in the family of hardware and software that has a plus on it means it can play on the Atari 2600 Plus. So if we launch a new cartridge or a new controller of different kind, which we're going to be bringing more and more software and hardware out, anything that's in the Plus family means it's interoperable. If I buy a Plus controller, it's going to work with any Plus console. If I buy a game that has Plus on it, it's going to work on one of those consoles. So that's what it means. It was meant to designate an ecosystem, as opposed to, naming it the Atari, 3800 or 52,000. We could have named it any number of things, but I think the intent behind the 2600 was it's a replica of the original 2600 at the end of the day. So why not name it that? And then the plus designates that it's part of a growing system of stuff that works together.
Cool. Why the intent to make it? I just want to ask this question, putting myself in the shoes of this doctor here, and I'm assuming you are literally a doctor, Dr. Surge the Tenrec.
I would hope.
So, yeah. Was it what was the intent of creating the 2600, giving it the ability to play the 7800 games instead of, say, creating a 7800 Plus a year later?
Well, the 7800 and the 2600 share a cartridge. The physical cartridges are the same. So as long as you have, the ability to read the 7800 cartridge in a 2600 machine, it's going to fit in that slot. So why not, right? It significantly increases the number of games that you can play on the hardware. So I thought, I think that was probably what was behind us. It doesn't preclude that we might not make a 7800 or a 5600 or a Jaguar Lynx or something else down the road. But at the time, they thought, okay, let's make this as useful to people as possible. So if they have 7800 cartridges at home, they can just slot them in and go.
Great. All right, moving on. Probably one of these questions you can't answer. Maybe one of these, that'll be amazing answers. Necron says, with the acquisition of Intellivision, can we expect to see a new mini console or Intellivision Plus type system in the future?
My answer to this question is that, we didn't, once again, we didn't acquire Intellivision brand and all those games just to lock them in a vault. So we intend to do stuff with them, whether or not it's showing up in hardware or software. This is a point of active conversation within Atari. I'm sure both of you would agree. Whether or not we come out with an Intellivision Plus or approach it in some other hardware way, we certainly want to find a way to make new and old Intellivision games playable again. That is something that Atari will do one way or another. The Intellivision has that unique keypad controller, right? So it's kind of an odd duck. It's not like it's a form factor that's particularly common. So we need to figure out how to replicate that. There are some Intellivision games that you just really can't play with a joystick or a modern controller or a trackball. So I think the team's looking at what's the best way to approach this. Is it some add-on to hardware we already have? Is it standalone hardware? Or could it be a mini? You mentioned that new thing that came out today, that little handheld with the wood grain and the blaze. The answer could be all of the above. We could do all those things. We might come out with an adapter. We might come out with a standalone, and we might come out with some mini consoles. whatever we can do that we can do well, that we think will do well in the market, and make the game super accessible, we'll take a shot at it.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, cool. JD in parentheses, Bubsy must die. You basically asked the same question, but your username makes Sam Brown sad, so I'm not going to read it.
It is a similar question.
It is literally the same question.
It is the same question.
Yeah.
And I think the answer has got to be, that's our intent, and we'll see what happens. But our intent would be, yes, we want people to be able to play the original Intelligent carts. We'd sure like to make some more new ones, and we'd like to create a market for the homebrew developers, which is one of the things the Atari 2600 Plus did. Is now there's a much larger addressable market for homebrew.
Getting ahead of the questions here.
Sorry.
Got a question about homebrew later.
All right.
Got to go quicker here because I'm actually running out of time. So let's see here. Krim, what future hardware plans does Atari have? Will we see the Jaguar Plus or 5200 Plus at some point? Are there more new games like Mr. Run and Jump planned for 2600 and or 7800?
I don't know.
We have more plans for hardware stuff coming, for sure. Nothing to announce, but we continue to be excited about new hardware stuff we have coming.
Yeah, cool. Brian Childers, he asks a similar question with the ST Atari portfolio. Nothing to announce at that point. Kind of all the same stuff. David kind of went deeper into answering the last question than I think we could have ever imagined. So that's good stuff for all you guys.
Well, the Atari ST, the Atari, the 400 Mini that came out is an ST machine that you can sideload content into. So anything from that era, you can play on the 400 Mini. So there already is a piece of hardware out there. And then, I think there are some ST games on the current Atari 50, right? So I think it's this question of how do we make some of these games, probably more a question of curating these games for different
totally
software than bringing more hardware out, at least in the near term. But you never know.
I think like one of the interesting things that David's touching on is that moving forward into the future, you're starting to see that we have these channels for where these games can be distributed in different ways through physical carts we make, through like all-in-one emulated boxes, or like the Dream Gears, stuff like that. And then there's like the Atari 50 where going to all digital consoles and Steam and PC where it can be accessible through games like that. So we're going to continue to do that, and we're building up those lanes of distribution.
Oh, 100%. And it's really cool too to see us like going back into arcade cabinets. Alan One announced that they were bringing out an arcade cabinet that had our Recharge games on it, which is like this
podcast episode. We did the podcast episode with Alan One. You just forgot it. You're such a big fan. You're just so honed in on
No. I was my favorite podcast episode of all of them, Jason. No, but it's really cool, and it's also.
I thought we keep getting better, so I thought they were all interesting.
Well, this one will be now the best because I'm on it, but
right, of course.
Yeah, no, I just think it's really cool that some of our most recent games are going on to like our original form factor. So yeah, you're going to see. I think the way that Ethan answered it is perfect.
Cool. All right. How Knuckle Allen comes back and says, "How does an indie company get their game on the VCS?" I could take this one. You're in the Discord, so you're asking questions. So you're in the right place. You want to hit up a man called David Page. Davpa, he is your source to get onto the VCS. And if you don't know where to start from there and you're on Twitter, you could give me a tag at Jays of Doom. You could at Atari, and we will get that to the right person. We'll get that to David, and he'll be able to set you up on the VCS. So indies are welcome. It's a pretty straightforward process from there. So yeah, that's how. Reno, with the penultimate question, do you engage with homebrew content at all? Are there new 2600 games out there that grab your attention? First, I'll take this and say, Atari acquired Atari Age, and that is like homebrew central, seemingly for the Atari community. And I will have Al on an episode in the near future, so be on the lookout for that. If you have questions for Al, you can throw those into the Discord, the podcast questions channel, and I'll be sure to ask him those when he's on. That'll probably be sometime in, I don't know, August at this point. We'll see. So yeah, there's that. David, you were going to say something about homebrew as well. Did you want to address that?
Oh, I can just say, looking ahead, you're going to see a lot of energy around 2600 and 7800 homebrew development. We do, as you said, Atari Age has been a great platform for homebrew developers to not only learn and get feedback and sort of build their own content, but it's a store too. Al sells cartridges, and part of what has been happening behind the scenes is Atari is helping Al invest in his e-commerce platform so that he can do that easier and better, and really help build up that market. As I said, the 2600 Plus created a larger audience for homebrew developers, and I think we do see, if Matt Burnett were here, if I were to channel Matt Burnett, who's running our hardware project, he would say, yeah, we see, we certainly intend to bring certain homebrew titles or work with homebrew developers to bring their content out into our official Atari publishing channels, right? So there are certain games that will get an official Atari release. It's not just going to be us republishing games that had come out earlier, but we'll be looking to the homebrew market for content, or with like Mr. Run and Jump, sometimes new games.
Good stuff. All right.
I think it's important to say too that like Al and what goes on at Atari Age doesn't happen in a silo. Like there are we have weekly company meetings, and we've had several meetings where Al talks a lot about what's going on in the community and talks about homebrew games to the whole company, and we all talk about and discuss like what's going on there. So it's very much part of everything Atari's doing.
Yeah, and if you look forward to, if you're really interested in homebrew games, the big moment in Al's calendar is Portland Retro Gaming Expo, which has been moved to the last weekend of September this year, and he typically does a massive release of games for that show. But they'd be available online, but also at the show. So I know he's working towards a big reveal of new content for PRGE.
Good stuff. He gave a dynamite presentation on all the effort that goes into his setup for Portland Retro. It was crazy. The amount of stuff he could fit in a car. Really impressive. Really impressive. All right. Last question. I love this question. Knuckle Allen. Again, the hat trick says, what cat species would the Atari VCS be called, since there was the Jaguar and the Lynx?
Wait, what? What?
I have my answer.
I have my answer too.
Wait, I misunderstood the question.
So the Atari VCS.
Oh, the VCS.
If it was given a cat species like Jaguar or Lynx, what would it be? David, what do you got?
I'm thinking Bobcat.
That's what I was gonna say.
Well, I wasn't. My answer was going to be the Sphinx, and I will not elaborate on why. So, with that, because I gotta go.
I like the Bobcat.
Look, I don't dislike the Bobcat. There's no right or wrong answer here.
A lot of Bobcat in conversations recently internally.
All right, and mine is, mine is obviously more correct. So in the comments below, you could tell us what you would name the VCS and why I'm correct as calling it the Sphinx. All right.
The Sphinx sounds more like a console than the Bobcat.
Yeah.
Well, it seems more regal. Sphinx.
Yeah, like Sphinx or Coma. That sounds like a.
I don't think you could ever call something a Sphinx because of there's probably some language barriers to saying it. It's already a kind of a tough word to say. It's too many consonants in a row. But either way, Sphinx still gets my vote. Weird ass looking cats.
Yeah, and the 2600 had an old black version called the Darth Vader, and we could do a custom version of the VCS because Bubsy's a Bobcat, and I know we could do a Bubsy version of.
Yeah, do like an orange one.
An orange one, yeah.
Orange and red.
I like that.
Or white and
Original
red.
VCS prototypes, they had different color front plates. So there was a gold, a red, and a black. And then
I remember seeing a clear one back in the day.
Sounds like a prototype one. Wasn't that the prototype?
Yeah, they were prototypes.
Prototypes were clear. Yeah. Clear consoles and electronics, universally underrated.
Yeah, the best.
Well, you know what they use them for?
Another 90s thing that went away because it's not slick and modern.
It's not. It never went away. You want to know why? Because they only allow, as far as I understand, clear electronics in jails. So like the TVs in jails are all, because they need to be able to see what's inside them.
Prisoners always get the cool stuff.
They do,
right, guys?
No, they do not.
But I mean, basically, it's just clear to begin with, and they get painted, right? Or I guess the plastic is probably. Anyways, I don't know what I'm talking about.
I don't know.
I like clear stuff.
Yeah, there was a clear VCS, but it was part of the manufacturing process. They sent. I think it's sort of standard that you make a clear version. I'm not sure why.
You know, you could make.
If we get 500 likes on this video, then we'll have a conversation with Matt Burnett about releasing a limited edition clear version of the VCS.
Perfect. Love it.
I just saw a clear version of a yet to be announced piece of hardware.
Yeah, I saw
Matt sent me last week. Was
it cool?
Well, yeah, it's cool, but I think that's sort of a standard thing that they always make a clear version before you use the final plastics.
Here's a fun fact. You can actually, because the Game Boy Advance was or I guess it started with Game Boy Color with the clear purple, like most handhelds that you can buy, like the Steam Deck, for example, you can buy a clear shell replacement for the deck and the Switch. So you can make it look like that OG clear Game Boy aesthetic, which is pretty cool. I guess that's not
for my Switch.
Jason, I just want you to know that over your right shoulder, there's been this dude in the window who keeps coming by. I think he's trying to watch the podcast from across the street. It's like caught my eye consistently that you have fans that want to see the show live.
Pretty sure that guy has headphones in and he's got his back to us, but that's okay. All right, let's really wrap this thing up because I gotta go. Join the Discord, buy NeoSprint, Wishlist and pre-order Yars Rising, summer sale, do that thing. I said Discord again, but there you go. What else? Reviews.
Summer camp's coming up.
Summer camp's coming up. Next podcast will be recorded well in advance, so don't bother asking questions for it. But there will be more that will be recorded this month. But the next podcast, teaser, because I know exactly what it's going to be. We'll be talking about Volgar 2.
Oh, that's right. You're going to have Chris on, right?
Yes.
That's going to be awesome. That's going to be awesome.
It's going to be a good one. So something to look forward to. That'll be dropping on July 19th.
Awesome.
So until then, thanks for listening. Ethan, David, thank you for joining. Catch you on the next one.